today I have the honor of being joined by two top-notch legal thriller writers. If you haven't figured it out already, we've got Steve Martini, Phillip Margolin. Welcome, gentlemen. Let us start where these novels started. What was the germ of the idea that brought you to Executive Privilege and Shadow of Power? Phillip, would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of weird. This idea, I got the idea for the book in 1995, and I was thinking about Nixon and how he had run a burglar ring out of the White House. So, you know, authors sort of push the envelope, so that was sort of like a minor type crime. So I thought, well, could a president do a big crime like be a serial killer? The plot kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then finally about 2 years ago, the thing that was stopping me from writing the book was I couldn't figure out the ending. And then I had this big light went off in my head one day when I was driving back from Central Oregon. I said, oh, that's the ending, and then that's how I wrote it.
I stole my idea from Phil.
Yeah, when am I getting my royalty payment? I want to know that. So.
Actually, the idea for Shadow of Power came about as I was doing research for another book about 3 years ago. And I was looking at the Constitution. I can't even remember why. But in the process, it's a fairly thin document. I noticed, and I had known this, but it never really struck me before, that the language of slavery, the code words that the framers used originally in 1787, were still there.
Well, so my next question is really a two-parter. Both of you write very densely plotted and ornately plotted books. Once you have the basic idea, how much outlining do you do? And then do you start with an ending and sort of work backwards towards it? Or do you have a what-if, well, it sounds like you did, and then move forward until you find the ending?
Yeah, the way I work is I get an idea, and I won't write until I've got it pretty much in my head. So a number of my books have taken like 15, 20 years, 3 years, 4 years. When I get the ending, I'll start doing an outline, okay? Because I will not write a word till I know the ending. The books all I like the word ornate better than dense. But they're complex plots, and so I have to tie them all up or I get angry letters. So I will not write a single word till I've got the ending pretty firmly in my head. Then what I do is a very lengthy outline. It takes a month to 3 months to do.
So it's quite detailed, and so you don't find yourself discovering much in the actual word-to-word writing of it. It's pretty much
no, that's not true, because
no?
you know that's the fun, because you think, you know, you write this outline, boy meets girl, boy and girl fall in love, boy and girl get married. Gosh, that's pretty easy to write. How tough could that be? But when the outline's one-dimensional, you know, then you start creating a three-dimensional world, and maybe the girls are right-wing Republican, the boys are left-wing Democrat. But that's the fun for me, because otherwise it'd be boring. I'd just be, you know, copying my paragraphs onto the bigger form.
And what about you, Steve? Do you do a lot of outlining, or do you?
Yeah, I didn't on my first book. The first book I wrote without an outline and discovered that that's not the way to write a mystery. And I wrote up a lot of dead ends, and I had a 400-page manuscript that was actually about 700 pages long with all the pieces that I threw out. So on my second book, yeah, I started plotting and outlining my stories. And I do find I've done everything from a 8 to 12-page outline that I send to the publisher to a 60-page outline. That's the longest I've ever written. Sometimes I'll write ancillary outlines, you know, one that goes to the publisher and one that I hide from them. And it is true, you know, you start writing with an outline, you think you know where you're going, and then you get to the end and you find out your girl is a boy, you know, and you know, that surprises you sometimes. But yeah, there are twists that crop into storylines that you would not anticipate at all. But all of a sudden it's presented to you because you've written 250 pages, and you go back and you think about it. Well, if that, you know, that could happen, you know.
But you both write books that are, among other things, whodunits. Do you, once you have your what if, you have to have then this crime. Before you get going, do you have to think first, well, who do I want to do it? Or do you just think, well, I want these series of conflicts, and I will figure out who done it once I get to, say, 2/3 of the book through?
Yeah, I always have to figure out what the end is.
That's one of the first things you do.
Yeah, like I said, I will not write a word till I've got it, because everything with the type of book that I write, they're are red herrings and they're
Right.
twists and turns. So I've got to know where the book is going, and once I know the end, then I know where to put the red herrings in, and I know where to put the twists and this, that, and the other things.
But by the end, do you mean necessarily who did it or how you're going to get them to
Yeah,
who did it? Because there's two
both.
endings, right? in a
Both. I
sense.
have to know who the bad guy is and how they're going to get caught.
Right.
And I can't write the book until I know that. And then once I know that, then I can go backwards and say, oh, okay, he's going to get caught because he's left-handed. So in chapter 3, I'm going to have the guy picking his nose with his left hand.
right.
So everybody will know he's left, but it's going to be subtle, you know. And then, but I'm going to put in something here where he does something with his right hand, but it's just a phony deal. But you've got to know who did it and then what's going to trip him up.
Well, so now here's a question for both of you then. So you have to obviously lay your clues out as you're getting towards the end. But how often have you been creating a character where you gave them a trait and you didn't realize that was going to be a clue, and then you come to find out, oh my goodness, that will be my clue that I can use? Or do you always consciously say, okay, he's got to be left-handed and he likes to wear fedoras and boat shoes, or do you have details that suddenly come to you later on?
I don't think I've ever had
Those
that
are always intellectually
yeah.
sort of.
I mean, because that's why I have
a little
this.
different.
That's
Oh,
why I
yeah.
have the.
How do you-
Okay, yeah.
I've stepped off on manuscripts and started writing before I'd actually. I usually always know who the perpetrator is going to be. Now, it doesn't always end with that perpetrator committing the offense, because you have a cast of characters, and sometimes you get 2/3 of the way through the story and you start realizing you've got two possible perpetrators here, and it could be either one. And that's a wonderful situation if it happens to develop for you, because you can play one off against the other and really keep them guessing as to who it is. And in fact, that happened in this book, and it was just pure serendipity. But I often do not know what the gotcha is going to be. Okay, how it's going to be revealed that this individual committed the crime or was the perpetrator. That sometimes develops during the course of the story as I write. Okay, and I don't necessarily feel that it's essential that I have to have that before I can start writing the book, because that's something, if you think too far ahead, sometimes I end up forcing myself into contrived situations that are better if they develop sometimes as the manuscript develops, because you're going to find it's more in character with the character you're creating as you go on, because you don't know how that character is going to walk on the page until he's there for maybe 150 pages, especially if it's not a recurring character. So sometimes I won't try and force those things into an early outline, and if I do, oftentimes they'll change, because opportunities I hadn't foreseen when I wrote the outline will present themselves as the story unfolds.